law went into effect in Tennessee, Margaret Bim called me and said, Billy, we lawyers have to do something to help these doctors that are going to be prosecuted under this new law. We've got to train them. And she also says we have to do something to regain women's reproductive rights. So, anyone who knows Margaret Bim knows that she is a fierce civic advocate, and I say yes, I'll join the board. I'm not aware of any doctors that have been prosecuted under this law yet, but the law has had a chilling effect upon the willingness of healthcare providers to provide prenatal care if that treatment could potentially lead to termination of a pregnancy. The Freedom Circle hired a director and a lobbyist, and our efforts, along with those of other advocates, were very instrumental in getting an exception for the life of the mother passed through Tennessee legislation. It's not the best worded bill. It's narrowly worded and somewhat confusing to doctors, and this exception is just a start. We're continuing to work alongside healthcare providers and other advocates for broader exceptions where the mother's life or the life, well, the mother's health rather, or the life of the mother is at risk. But we're not going to stop there. We are going to continue to work for reproductive freedom and access. And we're working along with public officials. We're doing a public information campaign. We are trying to get other people to contact their elected officials and legislators and vote for people who are pro-choice. And I just also want to thank our contributors, because that includes everybody in this room. And you notice on the program we have chairs, like the people who donated the chair level would like for you to stand. Raise your hand. We would like you to raise your hand. We couldn't do this work without your support. Now, just a few housekeeping matters. Monica Mackey, we want to give a special thanks to for securing this Tennessee Justice Center for this event. And we want to thank our caterer and our bartender. But we have just a few little housekeeping rules housekeeping matters. If you need to use the restrooms to my left and to the left again down the hall. And we're asking you not to interrupt the speaker during the program. So
unless you want to clap over it.
Okay, that's loud. Yeah. Now, finally, I want to introduce Representative Afton Bain, who will introduce Governor Beshear. Representative Bain is the first woman to represent House District 51 in over 50 years, and the youngest serving woman in the Tennessee House. She's a fierce advocate for reproductive rights and has spent a lot of time organizing in rural communities in Tennessee and beyond. While working at the Indivisible Project, she was the senior regional organizer for Kentucky and Tennessee, helping to elect Governor Beshear during the 2019 election. So I'm going to now turn it over to Representative Bain.
Story for Governor Beshear that I think he'll really enjoy. So good evening, everyone. First and foremost, I want to express my sincere gratitude for the Tennessee Freedom Circle. I'm honored to introduce you all and very grateful for the opportunity. This is my former organizing alma mater, the Tennessee Justice Center. When I moved back from Switzerland in 2016 when Trump was elected, I got the community organizing job here, and it dramatically transformed my life, as did Michelle Johnson and Gordon Bonneman. A special shout out to my parents who traveled all the way from East Tennessee. They are driving their pickup truck in the Nashville Pride Parade tomorrow. I reproductive justice in the state. And of course, a warm welcome to our neighbors from Kentucky. They say you can choose your friends, but not your neighbors. Well, if we had a choice, we'd probably pick Kentucky, just maybe not during basketball or football season. Okay, so I want to take you back to 2019. Imagine a sweltering late August afternoon with me navigating chicken coops trying to reach the front door of a house nestled at the head of a holler in Breathitt County, Kentucky. Suddenly, from behind a collection of rusted cars, a voice shouts out, "What do you want?" I introduce myself as Afton, a volunteer with Indivisible Southeastern Kentucky, canvassing in support of your gubernatorial campaign in 2019. The guy eyed me up and down and chuckled. He said, "You know you're not wearing the right shoes for this." And without missing a beat, I replied, "I never wear the right shoes." Locking eyes, I asked, "So what do you think about Andy Bashir?" He leaned back and said, "Listen, I'm not political, and politicians never do what they say, but I'll tell you this, his daddy did what he said he would, and I know Andy will do the same." And as it turns out, that holler in Breathitt County, Kentucky, was where now U.S. Senator J.D. Vance spent his childhood summers, and it was J.D.'s uncle who I canvassed. So, fast forward to 2024, I now proudly serve as the youngest woman in the Tennessee House of Representatives, with only 3 Democratic women in the body, and I want to give a just heartfelt thank you to Representative Gloria Johnson, who for many of us would not be here today. Passing one of the nation's most extreme abortion bans, I hoped the Republican supermajority might pause. I know none of us will be surprised, but they did not pause. They continued their relentless crusade, further criminalizing the abortion ecosystem, inserting anti-abortion propaganda in our public school curriculum, and enforcing harsh sentencing laws that deepen poverty and family separation. Bills like the abortion trafficking bill epitomize their tactics, imposing civil penalties and jail time on those aiding minors seeking abortions out of state. With the support of the Tennessee Freedom Circle, your lobbyists, and Healthy and Free Tennessee, you all helped so many of us in the amendment drafting process, legal maneuvers, our committee testimonies, and I'm forever grateful. But we couldn't halt this relentless onslaught. It's clear that this fight is not confined to red states. It is a national struggle against increased surveillance, erosion of our First Amendment rights, and travel restrictions, among many other challenges. That's why I've dedicated my career to organizing alongside and in the reproductive justice movement. Deep canvassing in rural Tennessee, talking about abortion access, managing campaigns that target rural and small town voters in Ohio and the imminent Montana abortion ballot referendums, and advocating for leaders like myself and Representative Governor Andy Bashir, who wakes up every day and goes head to head with the Kentucky legislature to champion reproductive freedom and stand firm in his belief that the right to make personal, private decisions about one's body is fundamental to our democracy. His work in Kentucky is an example of what is possible when leaders prioritize the rights and well-being of their constituents. Governor, we're only one state apart, so if you ever need a good dose of Southern hospitality, you know where to find us. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming
Several of you might know I'm a Vanderbilt graduate. But excited to be back tonight and honored to be invited by the Freedom Circle. I wanted to make sure that you know, from me, that what you're doing is important. It's critical, and I know it's hard. I know there are days that you wonder if you'll gain ground. I know there are days that you wonder how long you'll have to scratch and claw just to do the right thing. But this work needs to be done. There are people out there, and you're going to hear from Hadley, that are desperately counting on all of us. And I'm here tonight to tell you, don't let anyone tell you that if you do this work, you can't win that next elected office. You might have seen a guy last November who stood up for the right things, who won re-election in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, not by 1, but by 5 percentage points. And we weren't just able to win. We beat Donald Trump's hand-picked candidate in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. We beat Mitch McConnell's hand-picked candidate. We beat Rand Paul in his home county of Warren County. And that candidate's about all the three of them have ever agreed on. Yet we still won. And I think there are two major reasons that we won that I hope are instructive to all of us in the work that we do and to people around this country to have the courage to stand up for the right thing. The first reason I'm convinced that we won is understanding that yes, while I may run as a proud Democrat, and I know there are people from different parties here, most people don't wake up in the morning thinking about their party. They're not thinking about the presidential election. They're not thinking about that latest poll. They're thinking about their job and whether they make enough to support their family. They're thinking about their next doctor's appointment and how far they'll have to drive or travel to get there, whether it's them or their parents or their kids. No one should ever have to take 2 buses or drive 2 hours to get the care that they need. They're thinking about the roads and the bridges they're going to travel that day and whether they're safe. They're thinking about the public schools that kids are going to and if they're getting that best education. They're thinking about public service in those communities. And it's important that when we do these jobs, like I think the mayor shows every single day, that we recognize that when we address those fundamental challenges that all of our families face, that they can't get to that next thing unless we meet those basic needs. That's a place where we can govern, and when we move forward, not right, not left, but forward, it lifts every single family up. It helps us all have a better life, and it helps us to be able to talk about issues and talk about different, even challenges that are out there in new and different ways. That's one reason. The second reason is I believe that we have led, and I will continue to lead, with empathy, with compassion, with always trying to put that golden rule that we're supposed to love, not like. Love our neighbor as ourselves. And the parable of the Good Samaritan that says every single person out there is our neighbor, no exclusions. To me, that means we are all children of God. Everybody deserving dignity. It's one of the reasons in my governorship, where I vetoed every anti-LGBTQ bill that's come before me. And even in a state where we have a not-so-super majority, and a veto override that's just 50% plus 1. I did it knowing that they would override my veto, knowing that they would attack me for it in the next campaign, because while especially groups of marginalized kids out there were hearing all this hate from our state legislature, I wanted them to hear love from their governor and their house. And I believe when we lead from empathy and we start talking about these issues from a place of empathy, not from a political position, but a place of human decency. When we talk about the why that we believe in it, to you it could be your faith, it could be your values, it could be your upbringing, any of that, then we're able to connect with people. And that's exactly why I'm so proud of how the Freedom Circle is going about their work here. Listen, we no longer live in the Roe v. Wade world. There is no longer in Kentucky or Tennessee any such thing as pro-choice or pro-life. Why? because we have the most draconian bans on reproductive health as anywhere in the country. We're victims of rape and incest as young as 12, and you're going to hear from one of the bravest survivors out there, Hadley Duvall. Have no options. Imagine somebody violated by a person in their family, someone that they thought that they could trust, someone that is supposed to keep them safe. There is zero fault. There's only a crime committed to that individual. And our state legislatures are trying to say that they shouldn't have basic options. Well, let me tell you, just like you see up here, 80% of Tennesseans start that conversation that way with the empathy that could be their daughter, that could be their mom. To me, that could be my friend. That could be anyone and everyone we know, and when we start having the conversation in that way, about real stories, about real people, then we can suddenly open people's hearts and minds and start to make real progress on opening up access. Listen, the women in Tennessee and Kentucky deserve a lot more access than just exceptions. But it is the right place to start. I will admit to you that there were some groups that came to me and said, Andy, it's not enough. What are you going to do if they send you a bill that adds exceptions for rape and incest? And I said, I'm going to sign it as quickly as it gets to my desk. And it's not that I didn't understand where they were coming from. It's not that I didn't agree that more access is what everyone deserves. It's a right that's existed my whole life until the Dobbs decision. It's just that if we should start anywhere and make sure that access is there as quickly as possible, it's those that have been through the worst of the worst that deserve from us the best of the best. It's also stories of non-viable pregnancies by folks that probably didn't vote for me, but they were willing to tell in this election that made a huge difference. Couples that wanted children so badly. And I can't imagine thinking back on the birth of my two children. I'm the dad of a 15 and a 14-year-old, so pray for me. Being governor's a lot easier than being a dad of two teenagers. But I can't imagine having to hear the news that far too many people who want to be parents do, that your child isn't going to make it, that you might have to hear the last gasps of their life the moment that they are born, and that you don't have an option, and that you're going to have to go through that. That's wrong. It is just wrong. And again, the vast majority of Americans agree that it's wrong. Extremism pushes everybody off. It's not the right way to govern. It's not the right way to have policies, because our policies aren't about proving how pure you are to this party or that party. They're about human beings. And when I think about what I hope my legacy is, it's not the number of D's or R's in any chamber. It's the number of people we've helped, how we move people's lives along, the type of lives that our people have. That's exactly how the Freedom Circle approaches this issue, and I believe that's how we start opening people's hearts and minds. And listen, I can tell you it works, because I was a Democrat running in Kentucky that ran ads on this issue in his election. One of the reasons we were able to do that is people are brave enough to stand up and tell their story. Hadley Duvall, one of the most special, bravest individuals I've had the opportunity to meet. She was willing to tell her story in our campaign. I still remember that conversation, saying, if you were going to do it for me, don't do it. And Hadley said, I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for every other 12-year-old out there that needs somebody standing up and fighting for them. Now, Hadley spent the day with the Vice President of the United States. And before she left, she said she'd only do it if she could get here on time. truth, because that's the type of person this is. An amazing leader, one of the bravest people I've ever met. So let me introduce you to Kentucky's own, but she's out there fighting for everyone, including women in Tennessee and throughout our country, Hadley Duvall.
Listen to what we have to say, and it means so much to know that there are women and people everywhere who are really fighting for what we all can agree is a basic right. And together, hopefully, we can accomplish a big goal and get back what's ours. Until then, we'll have to just keep fighting. When I was 5 years old, my stepdad began to touch me, how no father should ever touch their child. For years, as it continued, I assumed that this was normal. I thought it happened to all my friends, to everybody at home. I was 5. It started as a form of punishment, so I quickly learned to just be a good kid and do everything it took to be on everyone's best side. But that didn't work. Still, I found myself being woken up at night by my stepfather while everyone else was able to rest and enduring the unimaginable. My mom was in active addiction during the early part of my childhood. She went to rehab when I was in 7th grade, or I was 7, and she finally moved back home. We finally got our family back the summer before I started 7th grade. My innocence was taken from me before I even knew what an innocence really even was. I was asked a question the other day on a panel, and it was, how has sexual abuse affected your life? And I couldn't name a time that it hasn't affected my life. From all of my early memories, I have always been a survivor. And, that was something that I graduated high school and said, that doesn't come with me to college. I get to choose my story, and if nobody knows what I've gone through, that's fine. So I planned to be a nursing major, to stick with all my friends and do what they were doing, and quickly realized that I wanted to help people, but not in that way. 2 years ago, almost to the day, Roe v. Wade was overturned. That was also a day that I let out one of the biggest parts of my story that I had claimed I was very vocal about in the first place, when I knew that I wasn't. I had a miscarriage at the age of 12. And when I was 12, I probably couldn't have even told you what that meant. I endured it alone, in my bathroom. I took a bath after, and I went to bed. I went to school the next day. I was 12 and still playing with Barbie dolls, trying to cling on to whatever childhood I thought that I had left. But unfortunately, now every memory is still intertwined with sexual abuse as a child. When I did see my first positive pregnancy test at the age of 12, my stepfather had just checked me out of language arts class. And for the first time, I was jealous of everyone at school. When I saw the positive pregnancy test, I didn't even know what that really meant. But I heard something that for some reason just gave me a sense of calmness, and I knew everything was going to be okay when I heard, "You have options."
which is what my stepdad said to me immediately when he saw the positive pregnancy test. I had the options, and the trauma is still undescribable. And that didn't stop the abuse. The abuse continued for 3 more years. So right now, there are women in Tennessee, Kentucky, all over the United States who are going through that same unimaginable trauma that I went through. And even though I went through it, each and every story is so different and so unique. I could never speak for another survivor. At the very least, these survivors deserve some sort of power over themselves when all was stripped from them. At the very least, they deserve options. Why can we not give them that? Why do we tell women and survivors to speak up? Speak about the struggles that you face as a woman. But whatever comes from it, you're still going to have to deal with. And then you have to be questioned by detectives that could know your family if you live in a small town. That was my case. My stepfather pled guilty, and my case still took almost a year before the final sentencing took place. So why do we feel like we should continue to traumatize survivors and, make them go through a legal trial if that's what they decide to do, while also being forced to carry an unasked for pregnancy? You cannot expect women to know that they're safe in a world where there are laws on their body and none on a man's body. I'm here with a very clear message that exceptions are not all we want, but it's the right direction to move into. And our work is not done after it's passed. And even though in Kentucky the legislators didn't really want to give us what we had asked for, I still stood up every day and told them that I wanted those exceptions. They didn't tell me that they didn't. They just chose not to even listen to my bill. So unless you've been in the position and you're a survivor, and if you are, my heart goes out to you. You have no idea what it could possibly mean to carry a pregnancy resulted from your father figure. So just for that alone, there should be options. But for many other reasons that many other women can relate to, there should also be options. For your daughter, for your sister, your mother, your aunt, for you, you deserve options. And that is something that I will never back down from fighting for. And my team that backs me every day has all my love and all my appreciation, and thank you all so much.
Thank you both so much. I'm Tyler Yarbrough. I'm one of the founders of the Freedom Circle and the current board chair. And I'm just grateful to you both for being here this evening with us. We're going to have a discussion shortly. I want to tell you just a little bit more about kind of the work that the Freedom Circle has been doing. We were formed by a group of concerned lawyers in the wake of the Dobbs decision, which immediately put into effect here in Tennessee our abortion ban. And we got to work, focusing right away on the legislative session that was to come starting in January 2023. And our legislative focus in these first 2 years post-op have been on trying to work to create meaningful exceptions to our abortion ban. Exceptions that would allow physicians to provide the care that they feel they need to provide to pregnant women, and also to allow abortions in instances of rape or when there are fatal fetal anomalies. This is a mainstream position, as you've heard already, as our big banner tells you. In the reddest corners of this red state, this is a position that a full 80% of Tennesseans believe in. Let me just say, as has been reiterated by everyone, exceptions bills are not the end game. This is not anywhere close to providing the full and equitable access to abortion that is necessary, but we have to start somewhere. And we have to be dogged in bringing to the Capitol every single day the stories of women who, like Hadley, have experienced the trauma of abuse, the stories of women who have not received the medical care that they need because of our abortion ban. Tennessee Freedom Circle is the only organization that is solely dedicated to reproductive freedom, that has a professional lobbyist every day up at the Capitol. And this session, she was busy. Our goal is to arm our champion legislators, many of whom are here tonight, with talking points, with hearing questions, with amendment strategies, but we are also there to talk to and educate and support anyone who will talk to us, who is willing to work with us to improve Tennessee's laws on abortion and reproductive health care. This past session was a difficult one. It was impossible in an election year to get the fatal fetal anomaly bill that we had drafted off the ground. And we worked hard with allied legislators and advocacy groups to try to sound the alarm on the necessity for protecting contraception and IVF care, only to see a bill that would do just that die in committee. We look to our neighbors in Kentucky, and we are inspired by them. In 2022, Kentucky voters rejected a ballot measure that would have amended the state constitution to specifically say that it does not protect a right to abortion. And earlier that year, Governor Beshear vetoed a sweeping abortion bill that would have banned most abortions after 15 weeks. And even though he was vetoed, or he was overrode, the legislature overrode that veto, Kentucky voters stood with Governor Beshear.
That's right.
They re-elected him to a second term the following year after a campaign where abortion was not spoken about in hushed terms. No, in fact, abortion was front and center. That was due in large part to Hadley's powerful presence in Governor Beshear's campaign, and I am grateful that they are here with us in Nashville to talk a little bit more about their work. So, let me just start and talk to you both. Obviously, we have a very similar ban here in Tennessee that you have in Kentucky, where there are no exceptions for rape or incest. And Governor, in Kentucky, many voters who would consider themselves pro-life voted for you in 2023. And that has a lot to do with the commercial that Hadley was in, and also your opponent's extreme views. That certainly helped. What, in your experience, has taught you, first Governor, and then you also, Hadley, about what is the messaging that's effective with voters on this issue?
Thank you. And Hadley, as always. I made a statement earlier that in our current post-ops world, that I don't believe that there is in our states anymore a pro-choice or pro-life, and that's because that was whether you supported Roe v. Wade and what you were trying to do with it, and it's gone. I mean, I think that was the wrong decision, but it's gone. Where we are now is whether you support or oppose the most draconian ban that exists in the United States. Do you believe that victims of rape and incest deserve options? That's where the law is right now. Are you for that or are you against that? Do you believe that women with a non-viable pregnancy should have to carry it to term and undergo that trauma and the trauma of the family? Are you for or are you against that? That is where the law is right now, and I think it's important that we meet people where the law is, and that's where we start the discussion. And I certainly think it starts, again, not from a place of policy, but a place of empathy, a place of basic human decency, which I said earlier. You know, it's okay if you have changed where you might have been before to where you are now because of the extremism that's pushed our laws to a very different place. I mean, I think 80% of Tennesseans, about 85% of Kentuckians, will say somebody in Hadley's position deserves options regardless of what they used to say they believed in Roe v. Wade. So I think it's important in this battle to create more rights, to create more access, that we are very clear with people about where we are. Because I will tell you, the person I ran against tried to talk about the law like it was still under Roe v. Wade. He tried to say, well, how many weeks this and how many weeks that? We have no weeks. Right. It's zero. I think there should be more than zero. But when you start there, that educates people about what the current reality is. And I think that's what so many of these elections or amendments or referendums are. Do you agree with the current reality? Or do you think there should be change?
I think when you're, giving out the message, it's obviously being able to put a face to it and putting my story out there did help other people who truly cannot fathom that this does go on, behind closed doors. It goes on in your neighbor's house and you just don't know. I had neighbors growing up, but you just don't know. This could be going on to your friend's children, or your children's friends. It does not have your friend's children. It does not matter. And, being what Kentucky would consider, straight Kentucky girl like I am, white, middle class. I had two family households for the longest time. I have siblings, I have a daughter, I just graduated from college. Just all the things that paints me as the all-American girl. And, when you actually take a look into my life, it's been a lot of trial and tribulation. And being able to put that story and give it a face helps so many people who could never truly fathom the gray area that there truly is. And, it's not about being pro-life or pro-choice. It's just, I say all the time, I'm pro-mind your own business. If you live a religion and you practice a religion that grounds upon that decision, then you make that decision based on your own personal beliefs. But you shouldn't ground on somebody else who their religion could say something completely different, or the way that they practice their religion, they could believe that their God that they worship didn't believe that this should happen to them. Because I don't think that my God intended for me to have to marry a pregnancy of my own.
And Hadley, my faith tells me that if I judge you, I'm judged.
Exactly. So if we're going to live the religion out, let's just live it through and through. You would have to be one in your own personal rights and not based on the laws,
Yeah. Governor Beshear, why did you decide to make this a central issue in your campaign?
Well, there's some things worth losing every year. I mean, this is important. And, I don't think you run for things just to have a title or to be something. If you're doing the right thing, you're running for things because you want to help people. You want to do the right thing. And this was the right thing. Listen, the legislature threw so many things in front of me the year I was running that they were going to be able to choose to attack me on whatever they chose. Because they knew if they passed something hateful, I was going to veto it. And I did. Over and over and over. And I remember I'd have some meetings with some of my political advisors, and the number of veto decisions that we made based on the grounds of it's me. And that's enough. Right? It's me. And that's enough. But meanness also turns off voters. We've seen it as the commercials get more and more extreme and ugly. We saw it on the number of ads my opponent ran attacking trans children. They're already marginalized enough. My opponent claimed that we were putting this in front of people in schools and in libraries, and he put $8 million of commercials about it on TV. I can't tell you the number of parents that came up and said my kids weren't exposed to this or that. In schools or in libraries, they were exposed from your opponent's commercials. but it tells you that you can say voters, but it's our people, right? It's the American people. Do not like extremism and when things become mean and tough and nasty, and especially when people that they can relate to are directly harmed through it. This was something that I thought and I believed we would talk about in the election because it's the right thing to do. It also polls really well. It does. 80% of Tennesseans, 85% of Kentuckians, how have these not been passed thus far already? You know, many of us think that if 85% or 80% of the people in your state want something, you should do it. But then there's habit. Somebody who could deliver the message more powerfully than anyone I have met that had the courage to do it, that wanted to do it in both their own journey and to help other people. Well, I thought that we would likely talk about it. Did I think that we would make an ad and lead an ad with it? Not before I met Hadley. And again, it was important to me that this was her choice because she wasn't given choices at different times. Someone has taken away choices for people in her position. And then when you just saw, you see how Hadley is willing to be vulnerable but strong at the same time about what she's been through and how passionate she is about ensuring that anybody else who goes through it has options. It was a voice that the world needed to hear, and we had the ability to make sure that it was magnified and heard all across Kentucky. But let me tell you, it was so powerful. The moment it went online, the whole world saw it, and I think we're better off for it.
Hadley, your willingness to speak so openly, just as the governor said, in such a vulnerable and strong way at the same time is really inspiring. How did you sort of come to realize that you wanted to do this?
Whenever I moved to college, like I said, I really felt like I was going to leave the trauma behind. And I don't know why, I just felt like that's what people always said. Like, you move away, you leave all the bad, like, in your hometown, you know? And so I just wanted to go on and change the course of my life, and I just was not being fulfilled. And then starting therapy and moving out of my house and, you know, just everything, being alone and really figuring out who I was as a young adult made me realize that there is so much work to be done out there. I don't know how I can do it, but, you know, maybe I'll figure it out one day. And then I was just honestly given the best opportunity by Governor this year. And the support from him, his team, is the only